Hello, this is Nigel at Spiritual Awareness New Zealand on the Wednesday, the 9th of January 2019. It's hot as hell. My wife tells me it was 34 degrees in town when she was there. And as you can see, this is something about Steve Bannon. Whoops. And we'll get to that in a moment, and I'll show you. I'm going to tell you a story, and I've already posted this, but there is some extra information that I want to add to all of this, and I'll just close that one. And okay, so what I'm going to do is read out what I posted. I figured that would be the easiest way of doing it, because this has been quite a, well, let me start. Wow, it's been quite a journey of connecting dots to finally get this story. Not even quite sure how best to share it, as it has a few elements to it, so I will probably do a number of follow-up posts on this, and this video is a follow-up. It has also been a lonely journey because very few people want to know what I have to say on this subject. This is a quote I have seen a few times on Facebook about, there is a quote I've seen a few times on Facebook about how people will tend to find only that knowledge that conveniently fits into their preset views of what they want to happen. While I could be accused of that, I don't think, in all fairness, it would be true, since my journey was based on a number of things, including strategies that I have seen being used again and again by CIA and Mossad over the years. Mossad is the Israeli intelligence. To keep this short, I found the final piece to my puzzle this morning. This was when I wrote it a few days ago. Sent to me by a friend. The journey started with my search for the perpetrator of the Yellow Vest protests in France. I just sensed something on that, and it just didn't make sense. So I'll continue. I was going on the basis that there is always a hidden third party whenever this kind of thing flares up. If you look at all the popular people's uprisings in the last decade, you will find the same, including the Arab Spring and the Orange Revolution, the Ukrainian uprising and subsequent coup. Tongue twister. The same mechanisms have been in place in Venezuela, same was done in Libya, and so on. I found Steve Bannon, Trump's ex-election campaign manager and a proud Christian Zionist, by his own words, had visited France to meet with Marine Le Pen, leader of the French Nationals. He visited in March, and although I do not have any hard proof, receipts, funding proof, etc., the protests have been the result. Sure, sure, you could say it was a coincidence, but then let's keep connecting a few more of the dots, shall we? The next dot was that he had left the Trump administration in bad favour. However, as I suspected, I did find one person who wrote a blog at the time this happened, suspecting that his departure had been one of convenience and that he was possibly CIA and distancing himself to achieve certain objectives. Moving on to the next dot, it was my contention that as Trump's administration was anti-UN and anti-migration, he had gone to Europe to cause trouble for the UN, to destroy it if he could. Here is where it gets really awkward and complicated, because at this moment virtually everyone who was following me so far on the journey lost interest, because as they said, well, isn't that a good thing, destroy the UN? Well, I am not in favour of the UN either, particularly. However, I do value truth, and I was on a journey of truth, not of convenience. Further, when I have finished explaining this all to you, you may change your ideas on even that. In other words, you might change your ideas about not wanting the UN. And I'm not trying to convince anybody of that, but I'm just saying. So let's carry on. You see, one should, in my opinion, always look at motives and follow the money as two hard rules in investigation. But let's get back to Steve Bannon for the moment. Okay, so Steve Bannon goes over to France and talks to Marine Le Pen. That was in March of 2018. But that is not all he did in Europe. No, he stayed over there and set up a foundation to rival George Soros' foundations. Steve Bannon said he admired Soros, but considered him evil. Now, all of this I've actually gotten from news articles on the internet and interviews with him. Okay, and you can find all of this again, I assure you, it's all true. Well, I couldn't disagree with him on that point about George Soros being evil. Now, George Soros, in case you're not familiar, is a billionaire Hungarian-American, a migrant to US many years ago. He invested and made billions. He also has been very active in political manipulations over the years with such foundations as Black Lives Matter. Now that he is getting on, like he's getting old, he is pledged to give away his money to foundations. He has many foundations around the world. By the way, Russia, this is how awful this guy. Russia has kicked out all the George Soros foundations. So they were onto him as well. To that end, from 2016, Soros pledged $500 million toward helping migrants in Europe. $500 million. This was when all this riots and so forth were going on with migrants in Europe and so forth, refugees from Libya and Syria and so forth. Okay, so George Soros pledges $500 million toward helping migrants, and even before that, he'd been putting some money into help legal fees for migrants and so forth. Okay, fine, that's where he's at. Okay, so Steve, on the other hand, is anti-migrant and anti-UN, whereas Soros is a United Nations fan. So Steve Bannon sets up a foundation called, and wait for it, the name of it is called The Movement. Now, if that doesn't sound dodgy, I don't know what does. So Steve sets up this movement, literally called The Movement, and buys up some property in Italy where he plans to train gladiators, and that's by his own statement, by the way. You can't make this shit up. He plans to train gladiators for his far-right political views. He travelled, which mainly sort of like nationalism and this kind of thing, and anti-globalist and so forth. I'm not criticising or advocating any of this. I'm just stating what happened, okay? So just make sure you understand that. So he travelled in December 2018 to Belgium, and this is the next dot, and makes pals with the leader of the opposition in Belgium, who he makes a key member of the foundation. Now, I'm watching all of this unfold, and so in March 2018 he visited Marine Le Pen, and sorry for repeating myself, but I just want to really make you clear on all this. In November, the Yellow Vest movement breaks out in France, and and Le Pen there is no mention of her views in the media, her views, or I couldn't see any at least, on the Yellow Vest movement. However, note that if Macron is taken out in the elections, which are coming up, I think this year, I think, in France, then if Macron goes down, Le Pen is quite likely to get in because she is anti-UN, anti-migration, and there is this growing conflict between migrants and the French. And part of the Yellow Vest movement was this, dissatisfaction with migrants and with the government, the prices, and so forth. Now, okay, so carrying on with this, Steve Bannon goes to Belgium, and he makes friends with this leader of the opposition in Belgium, and he becomes a member of his foundation, the movement. Now, suddenly in the and I was just watching this to see what was happening, to see what would happen in Belgium with Steve Bannon being there. Sure enough, suddenly the Belgian Prime Minister announces he's going to step down because there's been a revolt. Now, Steve Bannon goes to France and there's a Yellow Vest protest. He goes to Belgium and the Prime Minister steps down because of a revolt there. The Yellow Vest movement protest starts happening in some of the other countries, but I don't think it's really grown a whole lot. And probably because the key stirrers for it are still in France. They wasn't well organised enough to actually get it going right through Europe, although it did happen. But you'll find that there were key instigators, and they would have been really active. Now, if you watch videos on the Yellow Vest movement, there were some people in it who didn't have yellow vests but had masks over their faces, and they were the ones who were lighting cars on fire and this kind of thing. Oh yeah. And now additionally, there were also snipers on the roofs in a couple of videos that were posted about Yellow Vest protests. They'd seen snipers on the roofs. Now, I don't think anyone got shot from those, probably because they were, because the videos came out of them being on the roofs and so forth, and they kind of cooled off a bit. Just my speculation, but the point being is that this Yellow Vest protest followed all of the usual strategies of the CIA and Mossad type strategies that they use to depose leaders they don't want. And Macron they didn't want for whatever reason. But I think he was too pro the UN and so forth. So let's carry on here, okay? So we are going I'm just catching up on this. So the Belgian Prime Minister steps down. Steve Bannon goes to France, March 2018, and later in the year there's a Yellow Vest protest. Okay, I've got that. And so I don't think this is all coincidental. Now let's tie all this together. In my research, I'm thinking, why would Trump really despise the UN and want it gone? And my answer to that is that it's not just to free the world, and I don't think he thinks that way. He might say that he wants to free America, it's all for America, or it's all for the world, or it's all for democracy and so forth. He's a player, he's an actor, and And I don't necessarily believe that. I just watch and see what he does and so forth. But you know, what you've got to ask, what's in it for him and what's in it for the US, and then I extended that to what's in it for Israel, because Trump has always been a big supporter of Israel. Something that Trump supporters like to play down. They don't like to talk too much about that. But he's a big supporter of it. He's still sending money over there to arms. He's just increased the donation or donations or whatever you want to call it to Israel over the next 10 years. And so what I'm seeing is that Trump wants the UN gone so that there is room for a US-Israel New World Order. Emphasis on Israel. Now, as you're probably aware, most of the Senate in America have dual US-Israeli passports, which also is another little clue in there. And Trump has visited Netanyahu, the Benjamin Netanyahu, a few times. If you watch, there is a very good YouTube, it's on YouTube, at a meeting that Benjamin Netanyahu had at the last AIPAC meeting, where he is bragging about Israel and all its power, and that it's a new internet power, and that he mentions that Google, Apple, Facebook, there might have been another one, all have research centres in, guess where? Israel. And these are all spying, and they also have a company in Israel called Qualcomm, apparently, and it is very, very to do behind internet security. And internet security, of course, is another way of saying internet spying. And so Netanyahu is bragging about how they, with all of these companies and so forth, they have such a sophisticated spying mechanism that it rivals the intelligence of any country in the world. And that's what he's bragging about. So I can find that link for you if you like, or I can maybe add it, or you can find it yourself, but it's around to be seen. Now, the morning that I made this post about all of this, where I'd been researching it and it finally came together, I'd actually seen a video where of a guy confirming that the aim of the Jews, the aim of Israel, is to depose, if you like, the United Nations, to become the New World Order with Israel ruling. And even if you look biblically or historically in Jewish literature, the Jews rule and non-Jewish are slaves of the Jews. Now, I can certainly give you the link to that video. It is very interesting, just from a historical point of view. Now let's get back to this video here, which is, and I'll translate this because it's all in French, but you can probably get the general idea of it. Paris brûle, si réjouit. I don't know how to pronounce. Let's just translate the damn thing. Right. So here we go. Paris burns, rejoices Steve Bannon in front of Marine Le Pen. the former advisor to Donald Trump and the president of the RN, and that, I don't know what that RN is, attended a meeting in Brussels at the initiative of a Flemish far-right party. Okay, so here is, in other words, Steve Bannon and Marine Le Pen celebrating that Paris burns. Now, to me that's pretty messed up, and it is also another dot and another proof, if you like. And this was on 9th of December, when the riots were going full thing, that Steve Bannon was behind the yellow vest movement in the first place. Why would you celebrate it? Why would you rejoice it if you hadn't done it yourself? You know, just and then get media on it. It just doesn't add up. So there are, of course, my report on this is running against the world, the entire world, just so many people, everyone has been saying that the French Yellow Vest protest was a people's uprising, and it was started by some French guy who thought it was a good idea to put on the yellow vest, and surely he might have started that and so forth, but I'm damn sure that it was more than that, and that he was funded, and this whole thing was pushed forward by Steve Bannon as the trouble source, who wants to knock out the UN, Marine Le Pen, who wants to get into power, and behind him the Trump administration, who are bowing down to Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. And that is what I'm getting at. Now, further to that, the Israel connection, the Netanyahu, and they are all based also into the this network of the elite who want the New World Order. And what I have said all along is that there will be a New World Order, even whatever happens, there will be. It's not a question of will there be a New World Order. The question is who will be running it and how will it be achieved. And what I see at the moment is that Israel is pushing through Trump and through Steve Bannon to actually knock out the UN by destabilizing it through these protests in Europe, and through putting in leaders, which is why Steve Bannon was sent to, and I believe he was sent to Europe to stir up this trouble. And so that is my summation of the whole thing. Now, I want to show you something else here, and that is that The Economist is a Rothschild's magazine, and this also shows that this also ties in with my assertion that the protest, the Yellow Vest protest, was organised, very carefully organised, by the elite, if you like, and not a popular uprising. Now, in 2016, The Economist magazine has a front cover each year, and in that front cover they put clues as to what's going to happen in the next year, predictions, if you like, or more like plans of the elite of what they want to do. Now, this one for 2017 apparently has come kind of late, come true, and you can see it here. There's the tower, Trump Tower. Something's happened to that. Here's Trump ruling the world as a monarchy, New World Order under Trump. Now, this was for 2017. Well, it sure didn't happen in 2017. But let's have a look over here at this one. Okay, and this is the Hermit card. And this one here, you see, and I'll go down further and you can have a better look at it. You see this, these yellow people marching with a TPP. Oh, let's go down and have a look now. You know, I can give you a link to this article too. There's the tower. But you can just see that this all is no, and this ties in with my plan, my idea that Trump wants the UN out so he can actually rule. And I'm only just, again, putting evidence here. Now let's have a look at this. So this is a TTP flag, you know, anti-TTP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and I'm marching with it. Right? Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. TTIP. My apologies. Okay. So this was planned for 2017, but happens in 2018. And the Hermit is standing over them, watching as they walk below him, kind of calmly standing there, which, as they mention here, hints that he, where is it? The Hermit thereby personifies the secret organisations for which the uncounted centuries have carefully concealed the light of the ancient wisdom from the profane. Okay. The Hermit therefore represents the occult elite, the secret organisations that have ruled the world for centuries and concealed occult knowledge from the profane, i.e. the masses. Is the Hermit silently watching the masses getting excited about nationalism because it ultimately falls into a greater scheme, no matter what the case may be? The next card is not very optimistic. I'm not going to go into that part, but in other words, that he's watching because they're doing exactly what is wanted. In other words, they're having this protest so that the UN will be destabilized, and it's going to be a new world order anyway. It'll just be it'll be an Israeli one probably, and the Israel in all of this is very in agreement with Sharia law and the Muslim culture, because it fits in pretty closely to their own philosophy, if you like. So I'm all presenting this here just so that you get a better idea, but all of this has come to me as, you know, I finally got all this information and it makes a lot of sense to me, and I put this all together so that you can see that this was not merely a coincidence. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at Ukraine, there was I think the US spent $6 billion into foundations in Ukraine prior to the coup, the Ukrainian coup. And then Jeffrey Pyatt, who was the ambassador to Ukraine at the time, and Victoria Nuland, who was the American Foreign Secretary of State at the time, were caught in a phone conversation organising the coup leaders. And then during the coup, there were snipers on the roofs who were shooting the police and the protesters alike, to try and, you know, create more trouble. And this is the kind of CIA, Mossad type strategy that they do. And if that fails, then they, you know, they take it further and start war and so forth. and the same sort of thing has happened in Syria. Syria woke up to it earlier, and with Russia's help, kind of booted out the ISIS and so forth, and exposed the whole thing, and so they're actually still standing. Libya was another case where the whole thing played out successfully, and Gaddafi was murdered. He had planned to introduce a gold dinar and trade only in gold, and the US didn't like that, so they destroyed him and his country. And those are the facts. And what did Macron do wrong? Well, probably supported the UN too much, and they want him out. Similar kind of thing, and so that we can get the ruler of the world on his throne. And so that brings me up to date on this whole thing. And so I'll leave you with that. And feel free to subscribe to my channel and to share the video around. Cheers. This is Nigel, Spiritual Awareness New Zealand, checking out.